Guys, please confirm to me. All of you read my voice on screen. Guys, please confirm to me. All of you read my voice on screen. Those are attending online. Am I audible? Guys, please confirm to me. All of you read my voice on screen. Those are attending in online. Right, sir. Now, understand it. Then what is the topic here we are understanding here? Steps to prepare Hibernate application. The topic here we are understanding. In the steps to prepare Hibernate applications, download and install Hibernate software, create a Java project in Eclipse IDE and attach all the Hibernate dependent jar files in the build path. Create a POSO class as per the requirement. Create a Hibernate mapping file. Create Hibernate configuration file. Then what next one here? Create a test application. These are all we are having what their steps to prepare Hibernate application. Already we have seen how to download and install Hibernate software. Installation is nothing. Downloading zip file, extract it. There we are able to get number of jar files. All right, that is the meaning of like what there downloading and installation. Create a Java project in Eclipse IDE and attach all the Hibernate dependent jars to the build path. What jar files minimum we required? All these points here we provided clearly. After that, driver related jar files also here we have to provide either OJDBC 611 jar file or MySQL connector J 8.33.jar. Next one is create a POSO class. POSO class is a Java bean class. It must not extend or implement any predefined library. To prepare POSO classes, then before that, what is the main purpose of this POSO class? No, to create persistence objects. To prepare what their persistence objects, we are going to use what their POSO classes. The main purpose of the POSO classes is to prepare persistence objects. What is persistence object? I'll discuss with you in the later on in the client application, in the test application. To prepare POSO classes, we have to use the following rules and regulations. What rules and regulations here we have to use there? First one is prepare a POSO class as per the database tables and their columns. In this case, POSO class name and its properties need not be matched with the table name and its column names, but we must maintain the compatible data types. Compatible data types are what they number in the sense int, comma, long, and so on. Varchar 2 is what their string. Similarly, float in the sense here what we are able to get there float like this here we are able to have. Then POSO classes we must provide a set of set xxx and get xxx methods for each and every property. In a POSO class, declare all properties as private and declare all methods as what they're public. Right, so now these points here we understood properties as private and all methods as what they're public. But one more point here we have to understand, declare all the POSO classes as public, declare all the POSO classes as a public, comma, non-abstract and non-final. Declare all the POSO classes as a public, non-abstract and what next one here? Non-final. Here we need to understand why it should be public. What is the requirement of declaring that POSO class as a public? If you understand it, point is very clear. Observe carefully. Who is going to create object for the POSO classes? No. In some situations, we are creating objects. In some other situation, Hibernate will create the objects. Understand my point here? In some cases, we are going to create the objects. In some other cases, Hibernate will create the objects. How it is possible for a Hibernate framework or Hibernate software to create POSO class object? No. For example, I want to retrieve a record of data from database table. As per that, I will write get method in my Hibernate program. Get method will get a record from the database table. Hibernate software will execute select SQL query internally. Hibernate software will fetch a record from the database table. That record will be given to the Hibernate program. That Hibernate program will convert that recorded data into the normal bean object. That means POSO class object. That POSO class object reference value will be written where that fetched data is available. Means that internally Hibernate software, when it retrieves data from database table, then it has to keep the data into the POSO class object or not. Then it has to keep the data into the POSO class object or not. Means that Hibernate software has to create an object for the POSO class or not. But when it is possible to create an object for the POSO class by Hibernate software. When the scope of the POSO class is available to the Hibernate software, then only Hibernate software is able to create an object for the POSO class. If scope is not available, Hibernate is unable to create an object. Hibernate software may be available at a project directory structure, or maybe C drive, for example. Understand my point? C drive, or maybe in E drive, it may be available. But your program is available at a D drive in somewhere else. No. So when it is possible to create an object for the POSO class, when it is a scope is available to the Hibernate software, then only object will be created. Got it or not? So when the scope is possible for the POSO class to the Hibernate software, when the scope is possible, when it is possible to bring scope of this POSO class to the Hibernate software, whenever the POSO class is declared as a public, then only it is available. If it is a protected, no, not possible. If it is a default, not possible. If it is private, not possible. Say, for example, I'm asking one more question to try to answer for it. How Java programs are executed? No, normal Java programs, core Java programs are executed by JVM. How it is? No, how it is possible to execute normal Java program by JVM? JVM must access main method or not? When it is possible for JVM to access main method? How it is possible? Okay, before that, I'm asking direct question. What is the requirement to declare main method as a public? What is the need of declaring main method as a public? If it is private, that main method is available up to the class only, but not to the JVM. If it is a default, that is available up to the present package, not to the JVM. If it is a protected, that is available up to the present package and child class in other package, but not to the JVM. If it is public, available throughout the system, then only that public scope will bring that main method to the JVM. JVM can access it. Similarly, your POSO class is available in our Java program, Java application. But where is that Hibernate software? Hibernate software may be available in E drive or somewhere else. No. When it is possible for Hibernate software to create an object for the POSO class? No. When the scope of this POSO class is available to the Hibernate software, then only Hibernate software will create POSO class object. How it is possible to bring POSO class scope to the Hibernate software? How it is possible to keep POSO class? How it is possible to keep? How it is possible to bring POSO class scope to Hibernate software? When we declare that POSO class is a public, then only it is possible. Otherwise, it is not possible here. That's the reason why. Because of the reason here, we have to declare that POSO class as what there public. Understand it? Where the main purpose of the POSO class, where the main purpose of the public, where the main purpose of the public in the POSO class declaration, where the main purpose of the public in the POSO class declaration is to bring POSO class scope to the Hibernate software. where the main purpose of the public in the POSO class declaration is to bring POSO class scope to the HIBERNATE software in order to create objects to the POSO class. We have to use to the POSO class. That's it. Already we have specified that where the main purpose of the public in the POSO class declaration is to bring POSO class scope to the HIBERNATE software in order to create objects to the POSO class. Leave it. Non-abstract only. It must be what there? Non-abstract. In Hibernate, what is the need of? What is the need of declaring that POSO class as a non-abstract? If it is abstract, is it possible to create objects? If it is abstract, is it possible to create an object? But in general, in Hibernate software, in Hibernate applications, we must create objects for POSO classes. Without creating objects, we are not going to prepare persistence data. If we want to maintain persistence data, definitely we have to create what their persistence object. POSO class objects we must create. It is mandatory inside the Hibernate applications. So if we want to create an object for a POSO class, definitely that class must not be abstract. If it is abstract, not possible to create an object here. Right. So now, where the main purpose of the non-abstract, where the main purpose of declaring, POSO class as a non-abstract class is to allow to create objects for the POSO class. Where the main purpose of declaring POSO class as a non-abstract is to allow the creation of objects for the POSO class. That's one point here. Then what is the need of this final actually? What is the need of this final? Why we are understanding about this final, Kirna? Right, sorry. For example, is a final or non-final? Non-final. Exactly, non-final, non-abstract and non-final. Why it should be non-final here? For example, if a class is final, is it possible to extend that class? Not possible to extend that class. Am I right or not? In Hibernate applications, in some situations, to improve reusability or to provide code reusability, it is required to extend one bean class to another bean class. Got my point or not? It is required to extend what class to another class? No, one bean class to another bean class. But if you want to extend a bean class to another bean class, definitely that bean classes must not have what their final keyword. They must not be final classes. Then only it is possible to extend one class to another class. No. Right, sir. Where the main purpose of declaring POSO class as a non-final class is to allow inheritance between POSO classes in order to allow inheritance between POSO classes in order to improve code reusability. Where the main purpose of declaring POSO class as a non-final class is to allow inheritance between POSO classes in order to improve code reusability. That's it. Right, sir. Overall, these are the three reasons why that POSO class must be public, must be non-abstract, and must be non-final. Got or not? Right, sir. Now, these are the various points here we have to understand now. All of you understand these points now? Maybe interviewer may ask a question to you. How POSO classes are going to be prepared inside the Hibernate applications? There we have to talk about all these rules and regulations. Okay, right, sir. So this is rule number 4. We can identify clearly. Right, sir. Once again, I'm asking there. All of you are getting clarity in these points now? Can I move forward? Right, sir. Now say this. Point number 5. For example, listen carefully. For example, I prepared employee EMP1 is equal to new employee of 111 comma AAA comma 5000 comma Hyderabad. Okay. Now another employee object here I created with a different reference variable, but data is same. Okay. System.out.println of EMP1 double equals to EMP2. EMP1 double equals to EMP2. Tell me what output here we are getting. EMP1 double equals to EMP2. What output here we are getting? Only two options for you. Maybe true or maybe false. What is right? As you know, core Java, you must give answer for it. True or false? Right, sir. Then most of the people are saying what they're false. Perfectly. Now, okay. Answer is what they're false only, not a true. Why, sir? Why we are getting false value? EMP1 is referring one object, EMP2 is referring another object. Two different objects are created, but data might be same. Two reference values here we are getting. Okay. So reference values are different. That's why we are getting what the two different objects. Now we are getting what value? False value. Right. Agreed. For example, EMP1 dot equals of EMP2. EMP1 dot equals of EMP2. What you are getting? True or false? Now still it is false. Actually, equals method was defined in object class. Object class equals method was defined in such a way to compare two objects references values, not content. But in string class, equals method was overridden to perform content comparison instead of references comparison. But in object class, equals method was defined to perform references comparison instead of content comparison. What is the difference between string class equals method and object class equals method? No. String class equals method is performing content comparison. Object class equals method is performing what their references comparison. Now here in employee class, I have not provided any equals method. Directly we are using object class equals method. So it is performing what their references comparison. That's why we are going to get what value? False value. But my requirement is what in my HIBERNATE applications? When I compare two objects, no, instead of comparing references, no, I want to compare the ID property values. What are these ID properties values? No, ENO property values. 111, 111, 111, 111. Both are same or not in both the objects? No. Then I want to make it is what their true value. Then I want to make it is what their true value. Equals method must return what value? True value. By comparing what? Employee numbers. If employee numbers are same, even the two different objects, employee numbers are same, I want to say what they're equal. Even though we created how many objects? No, two objects. Even though we have created two objects, but employee numbers are same or not? When employee numbers are same, I want to say this equal. That means what their true value. This is my requirement. Nothing, sir. Very simple. Employee table is available. EMP1 table is available. I want to insert two records onto the database table. Understand it clearly. Now in my HIBERNATE application, two employee objects I will create, EMP1 and EMP2, where data is very same. Data is what they're very same. I inserted first object into the database table. Accepted. Second object when I'm trying to insert, no, it will give an exception. Constraint violation exception we are able to get. Unique constraint violation, primary key constraint violation exception we are getting here. What is the primary key? The first rule. The primary key columns first rule is what there? Values must be unique or not. No duplicates are allowed in the primary key. Understand it now? But already one object we inserted. Second object we are trying to insert. But primary key value same or not? So there we are going to get what there? An exception. But instead of checking that exception or not, primary key value, primary key constraint violation is or not, after getting exception, before that I want to check it. Before that I want to check it whether these two are two objects or not. If these two are two objects, I will not insert second object. I will insert only first object. If these two are different, then only I will insert second object. That I want to check now. There I require equals method to compare these two contents or not. In employee class, I required equals method or not? Right. If it is the case, no. If you want to go for your own comparison mechanisms over the two objects, whether they are equal or not, there it is suggestible to overwrite. It is suggestible to overwrite equals method in our POSO classes. Employee is a POSO class. There where we have to suggest, we have to overwrite equals method. Then only we are able to get our required comparison. Right. Now the point is what there. If we want to compare two POSO class objects, if you want to compare two POSO class objects, if you want to compare two POSO class objects with our own comparison mechanisms, if you want to compare two POSO class objects with our own comparison mechanisms, then we have to, then it is suggestible to overwrite equals method. Then it is suggestible to overwrite what method? Equals method. That is one point here. Right, sir, leave this one. Not required, just I want to go for it. Now, I think all of you might be aware about collection framework. Is it? Are you aware about collection framework? Right. Collection framework, you already aware. Clear? Now, check this one. Tree set. Tree set is available. Tree set is mainly for what purpose? No. Okay, not even tree set, sir. Just leave this one. For example, hash set. Hash set is available. In a set, so hash set is available. Hash set's main principle is what? Tree set is for the sake of sorting, that we understood. Hash set is for what purpose there? No insertion order and no sorting order. Where if you want to keep the elements without following insertion order and without following sorting order, there we have to use what there? Hash set. Am I right or not? But how it is able to manage the elements inside the hash set? No. Each arrange all the elements on the basis of the elements hash code values. Yeah, this is the main principle inside what there hash set. No insertion order, no sorting order. But how we are going to arrange all the elements inside the hash set? No, just by providing what there, by comparing or by taking hash code values. You know already what is the meaning of hash code value. When we create an object, automatically an unique identity is created by the heap manager in the form of an integer value. That's what their hash code value. On the basis of the hash code values only, elements are going to be arranged inside what their hash set. Right or not? My requirement is what? I want to create maybe 10 objects, 10 employee objects I created. But the point is what? We are having only hash set is an option. Inside this hash set, I have to keep all the employee objects. But normally, if I keep that employee objects inside the hash set, in which order is going to provide all the employee objects, I don't know. But still, I want to trace these employee objects inside the hash set. I know about one point. Hash set is following hash code values of the elements. As I know the hash code values of the elements, as I know that particular point here, why don't we provide hash code values in our own way? And why don't we keep track of our employee objects inside the hash set? No? If we have controlling over the generation of hash code value for an element, we can generate the hash code value in a particular sequence. We can assign the hash code values to the employee objects in a particular sequence. And when we keep that employee objects to the hash set now, hash set is going to arrange all the elements as per that hash code values only. But already we traced the hash code values. Hash set is also be tracing the same hash code and is providing all the elements as per the hash codes. Then easily we can trace out our objects or not. In some situations I'm telling that. Okay. But max cases we are going to see either insertion order or sorting order we are going to do. But hash code ordering is by default inside the hash set. If we trace these hash code values, automatically we can guess what exactly the order that hash set is following there. I got my point or not? So because of these reasons, it is suggestible to override hash code method inside the POSO classes. It is suggestible to override hash code methods inside what their POSO classes if you want to generate hash code values in our own way for the respective objects. Right, sir. Now understand it clearly. If we want to provide our own hashing mechanisms, or maybe our own mechanisms, not hashing mechanisms, our own mechanisms to generate hash code values to the objects. If you want to provide our own mechanisms to generate hash code values to the objects, our own mechanisms to generate hash code values to the objects in order to arrange the elements in the collections like hash, then it is suggestible to override hash code method. Then it is suggestible to override hash code method in the POSO classes. Like sir, these are the various suggestions here what we are getting whenever we want to prepare like what there a POSO class now. All right, now understand point here. Now example code here I'm telling there, but I'm not going to include equals method overriding and hash code method overriding, that all these things are not required here. But namesake, just I want to prepare a simple POSO class, public class, for example, employee, public class employee. There here we have to prepare like what there, private int eno, then private string ename, private float esal, private string eaddr, okay, no problem. Just I want to conclude like this. After this, set xxx methods and get xxx methods. Like this here we are able to prepare this POSO class here. This is about like what their employee. But observe carefully, POSO class, that means inside the Hibernate bean component is what their POSO class. POSO class in the sense it must not extend or implement any predefined library. Am I right or not? But there is an exemption for one interface. There is an exemption for one interface. That interface is what there, java.io.serializable. There is an exemption for what there, one interface, that is what there, java.io.serializable. It is required. Why? Because in some situations, whatever the bean object we are getting inside the Hibernate application, that I have to send through the network. If you want to send that bean object through the network, definitely that bean object must be eligible for it. To get eligibility, we must implement what their serializable interface. So in some situations, it is required to implement serializable interface. In the remaining situations, not mandatory to implement what their serializable. But even though it is a POSO class, but it is exemption for what their serializable interface to implement. But it is not allowing any other interfaces, no. But it is allowing what? It is allowing what their serializable interface. You have to understand it clearly. This is totally the information about like what their POSO class, persistence class, what we created clearly. This POSO class is also be called as what their persistence class. The persistence class is able to allow to create objects. That objects are called as what their persistence objects. The persistence objects are able to store persistence data. Okay, this is the requirement of creating POSO class. Okay, sir. When we create this POSO class, then what next one can now tell me? Poso class we create as per the requirement. Next one is what there. Prepare Hibernate mapping file. Create a Hibernate mapping file. Nice. Create Hibernate mapping file. Create Hibernate mapping file. Understand this, all of you know. Create a Hibernate mapping file. Observe carefully. What is the main purpose of this Hibernate mapping file? The main purpose of the, see, what is the main purpose of the ORM? Providing mapping between object oriented data model, relational data model. That ORM is going to provide that mapping through XML file. That XML file is what their mapping file. Not more than that. Okay. The main purpose of the Hibernate mapping file is to provide the mapping details, mapping configurations between the following elements. Between the following elements from the object oriented data model and the relational data model. What are the various object oriented data model? Here we are getting there. Class. If it is a class, now it should be like what there. There we can provide what there, a table. Next one is ID property. If it is an ID property in the database side, it should be like what there, primary key column. Normal property. If it is normal property, then it is like what there, normal column, and so on and so on. Like this here we are having. Okay. All right, sir. Then after this, after completion of this, what Hibernate mapping file is able to provide inside the Hibernate applications. Basic mapping is okay, but in general, what it is able to provide. Right, sir. In Hibernate applications, mapping file is responsible. Mapping file is responsible for providing the following configuration details. What configuration details? No, first one is what there, basic OR mapping. After this component mapping. After this component mapping, next one is what there, inheritance mapping. After this associations mapping. What is it? Mapping, and so on and so on. So many things here it has to provide. This one is some of them all are listed here. In the future, we are going to provide so many things. Understand it clearly. But now, at present, to start our basic application, how we are going to provide a simple class configuration inside the mapping file. How it is possible to provide the very simple class configuration inside the mapping file. That's the point here. Right, sir. In a Hibernate mapping file, to provide mapping between a POSO class and a POSO class and a database table and its elements. Database table, we have to use the following XML tags. What are the various XML tags here we are going to use there? First of all, Hibernate mapping is a root tag. Now here we are going to provide what there, doc type definition. In Spring applications, we are using XSD. That's the next level of the doc type. Initially doc type, next one is what there, XSD. So here we need to provide what there, doc type definition. Then after that, what's the tag here we have to use there, Hibernate mapping. Inside this Hibernate mapping, there we have to use what tag there? Class tag here we have to provide. Class, configuration of a POSO class. Name is equal to something and table is equal to something that we have to provide. Slash class tag. Right, sir. Now inside this class tag, what we have to provide there? Property tag here we have to provide. Don't compare this property tag. Okay, before this property, we have to provide what there? ID tag here we have to provide. Name is equal to something, column is equal to something. Next one is we have to write like what there? Property tag. Don't compare this property with the Spring Bean component property. That is different. This is different. Of course, at the end, both are representing their properties only. But here the mapping, here we are providing. There no mapping. Okay, directly values we provided there in Spring framework. Now here property name is equal to property name and column is equal to column name of the respective database table, and so on and so on. So many things here we are providing, and so on here we are able to provide some content. This is clearly the mapping file configurations. Mapping configurations here we are able to provide. Now let me take some points here where class tag is able to provide, where class tag is able to provide, class tag is able to provide closure class configuration where where name attribute, where name attribute in a class tag will take the, observe carefully, name tag, name attribute in a class tag will take the fully qualified name, fully qualified name of the POSO class. What is this fully qualified name, sir? What is this fully qualified name actually? Writing a class name along with the package name. Writing a class name along with the package name. com.durgasoft.beans.employee. That is what their fully qualified name. So name attribute in class tag will take what their fully qualified name. Next one is after that, where table attribute in a class tag will take database table name which you want to map, which you want to map with the POSO class. That means here itself in the class tag we are providing class name, POSO class name, respect to table name, both will be provided. So automatically mapping is going to be available between POSO class and database table. Right, sir. Next one is ID attribute. Where ID tag is able to provide the mapping between ID property of the POSO class and the primary key column in the table. Okay, now here what is the point here I'm telling there? Between the ID property of the POSO class and the primary key column in the database table. That mapping here we are providing. Inside this again two attributes are available. What are the two attributes? No, name attribute, another one is what there? Column attribute. What is the purpose of name attribute and what is the purpose of column attribute here? Now understand it clearly. Where name attribute will take property name, that means ID property name, where where the column attribute will take the primary key column, where the column attribute will take the primary key column in the database table, where the column attribute will take the primary key column in the database table. That's it. Understand it clearly. Name attribute and column attribute. Both are completed. But one small note here I'm telling to you, observe carefully. In POSO class property name, database table column name, both are same. Column attribute is optional, not mandatory to provide what their column attribute. Understand my point? No? Right. If the POSO class provided ID property name and the database table provided primary key column name are same. If the POSO class provided ID property name and the database table provided primary column name are same, then it is optional to provide column attribute. Still we can provide, but it is optional, not mandatory to provide that column attribute. If both are same, just directly we can provide what their name attribute is same. That means instead of saying that name attribute value, column attribute value, both are same, then it is not required to provide, not mandatory to provide what their column attribute, no, right? This is one point. The next one is, what is the next one here? Property tag. What is the purpose of this property tag? No, it will provide the mapping between normal property from POSO class and normal column from the database table. All right, sir. Where property tag will provide, sorry, where property tag will provide the mapping between what's that? Mapping between what there? Mapping between normal property from the POSO class and the normal column from the database table. Property tag will provide this. Okay, fine. Next one is what there? Where name attribute will take what their POSO class property name, where column attribute will take what it will take there? No, database table provided column name. Again the same point, database table provided column name. Again the same note here I'm going to provide. What is that note here? We can understand, if the POSO class provided ID property name and the database table column primary key, not ID property. If the POSO class provided property name and the database table provided normal column name are same, then it is optional to provide what attribute? No, column attribute. Right, sir? Now it is completed. Now here I want to provide what their file. Before going to take this example, I want to give a small convention about the name of this mapping file. In general, the name of the mapping file is what is this name of the mapping file? POSO class dot hbm dot xml. What is this in general mapping file here? POSO class name dot hbm dot xml. Yes, sir, got it or not? For example, employee. Example here I'm telling to you. What is this actually? Employee dot hbm dot xml. employee.hbm.xml. Like this, here we are providing. Alright, sir. Employee.hbm.xml. Yes, sir. Got it or not? No, okay, fine. In general, the name of the mapping file is poso class name.hbm.xml. Example, employee.hbm.xml. That's okay, fine. So this is completed. After this, after completion of this, I want to take an example about this mapping file. See, understand this example here. Example code here I'm providing there. First of all, anyway, we need to understand it clearly. Doc type. Doc type here we provided. Now here we need to provide Hibernate mapping as a root tag. Then inside this we have to provide what their class name is equal to com dot Durgasoft.beans.employee table is equal to emp1 slash class name is equal to com.Durgasoft.beans.employee table is equal to what there emp1. Now inside this class, then what we are able to provide there, what content here we are going to provide there, we have to provide like what there id name is equal to eno, column is equal to eno. Now similarly, property name is equal to ename, column is equal to ename. Next one is property name is equal to ecell, column is equal to ecell. Property name is equal to EADDR, column is equal to EADDR. That's it. Now this is an example here we completed. Yes, sir, all of you are getting it or not? Then how we are going to prepare mapping file? How we are going to provide the total mapping details? That all the points here we understood. Next example here what I am telling to you. In the same here, what optimizations here we can provide now? If it is a case, can I remove this one? Here also be, can I remove this one? Why sir? Why we removed it? Why we removed it? The point is, now understand it clearly. Alright sir. If we use the database table, if we use the database table emp1 like below, right sir, now get emp1 is a table name, eno ename ecell eaddr, then it's optional to provide column attribute. Am I right or not? It is optional to provide column attribute eno ename ecell eaddr. Then in the poso class also be what properties can be provided there inside the poso class? No, eno ename ecell eaddr. As for that, when poso class properties and database table column names are same, it's optional to provide what their column attribute. We can remove this column attribute here in this example. Right or not? Right. So now this is exactly the story about like what their mapping file. This is a need of like what their mapping file now. Is it? Got it or not? All right, sir. No, so this is completed. Okay, then after this, what next one here we are going to understand after understanding this mapping file no, after completion of this Hibernate configuration file no. Hibernate configuration file. What exactly the purpose of Hibernate configuration file? What it is providing in our Hibernate applications? We have to understand it. The main purpose of the Hibernate configuration file is to provide all the configuration details of the Hibernate software, Hibernate software that what we need to communication to establish communication with the databases. Alright, sir. That we need to establish communication with the database. In general, what it is responsibility, what configuration details here it is able to provide. In Hibernate applications, configuration file is responsible to provide the following configuration details. Alright, sir. Now responsible for providing all the configuration details. Next one is what their connection properties, transaction configurations, connection configurations, transactions configurations, caching mechanisms configurations, connection pooling configurations, and so on and so on and so on. So many. Just only a few of them are listed here, but when we go for the applications, there we are going to use so many content here now. Next one, after this, in the simple Hibernate applications. Alright, sir. In Hibernate applications, to prepare configuration file, we have to use the following XML tags. Right, sir. We have to use the following XML tags. Now tell me, sir, what tags here we are going to use there? I think you are all of you are understanding these points now. Nothing is just information I'm passing there regarding what their mapping file we understood. Now what next one? Configuration file here. What is this configuration file? What is the meaning of this configuration file now? What we are able to provide. So let me provide the content here. First of all, this is also an XML file now. The default name of the configuration file is what there? hibernate.cfg.xml. hibernate.cfg.xml. CFG in the sense configuration. That's the default name. Of course, we can change it. It's not mandated to use the same name. We can change it, but we have to tell that information to the Hibernate software. Now I'm providing all my configuration details in this particular file, not in the default name. Right? In this particular file, we provided like this. We have to give some information to the Hibernate software. Alright, so now observe carefully what we are providing. Doc type. When we provide this doc type, what next one here we are understanding there? Now, Hibernate configuration / Hibernate configuration. Next one is what there? Session factory / session factory. Session factory. Now / session factory. After this, property name is equal to something. Then as a body, we have to provide what their value. No, there is no attribute like value. As a body to this particular property tag, we have to provide what their value. And so on. So many property tags. No, at the end here, we have to provide what their mapping or resource is equal to something. Understand my point? Right, sir. Now this is what exactly the syntax here we provided clearly. Next one is after this. What is the purpose of this? All the tags, no? Hibernate configuration represents what their configuration details about our Hibernate application. Where session factory is representing what their details related to the session factory object. Yeah, we are going to create session factory object inside the Hibernate. You'll understand it. What is the meaning of session factory in the future? All right, inside this, what properties here we have to configure now? Connection properties minimum we have to configure. These are mandatory. What are the connection properties? No, driver class name, driver URL, database username, database password. Right. Next one is dialect property. Dialect property. Dialect property in the sense I'll discuss with you. Try to understand it. What is the meaning of this dialect property here? First, understand it. All of you know. Hibernate is what? What is the main principle of this Hibernate? Not to write any SQL query inside the database application. Just we have to call Java methods. The respective database logic has to be executed. Okay. If developer is not writing SQL queries, then we can use the Hibernate for any type of database or not. We are not dependent on the database nativity, then we can apply this Hibernate for any type of database or not. So we can utilize, we can understand it. Hibernate is a database independent. Hibernate is what there? Database independent. Right, sir. Hibernate is what there? Database independent. It is not dependent on the databases. We can use any type of database for our Hibernate application. Hibernate is a database dependent, independent. Okay, fine. What is going on inside the Hibernate now? For example, when I call session.save method, when I call what there? Session.save of employee object reference I passed. Internally, what Hibernate is doing now? First of all, Hibernate is connecting with the is getting. First of all, Hibernate will listen the save method from client application. It will take the POSO class object. From this POSO class object, it able to get POSO class name, ID property name, and normal properties names and all. After that, it will go to the mapping file. With these POSO class name, POSO class properties names and all, on the basis of that, it will identify database table name and the column names and primary key column name. With this primary key column name and the normal column names and with the database table, internal it will create database dependent SQL query. Hold on here. First of all, it will listen persistence method, what we have applied, save method. Then after that, it has to prepare SQL query. How it has to create that SQL query? To prepare SQL query, we require table name, column names, and primary key column name or not. How it is able to get these details? No. First, Hibernate will take the POSO class name. From the POSO class name, from the POSO class object, it able to get class name, ID property name, and normal properties names. Only we are having employee object. Then how it is possible to get a class name, properties names and all? How it is possible to get? In core Java, I discussed one topic. What topic? By using what topic we are able to get the information about a particular class? A reflection API. The topic we discussed already. By using reflection API, Hibernate software will get a POSO class name, ID property name, and normal properties names from the POSO class object. After that, it will go to the mapping file. In the mapping file, on the base of this POSO class name, on the base of the properties names, it will identify as per the mapping details. It will identify the database table name, database primary key column name, database normal column names. When column names and table name we are getting there, immediately Hibernate software has to prepare database dependent insert SQL query. Hibernate software has to create database dependent insert SQL query with the column names, with the table name, with the data, what data we provide in the persistence object. By the execution of that inside SQL query only, our employee data is going to be stored into the database table. This is going to be happen inside the Hibernate. Am I right or not? But understand one point here. In general, from one database to another database, SQL queries are varied. SQL queries are varied. SQL is a database dependent. In Oracle, one SQL query we are able to write for insert. In MySQL, that SQL query format may be changed. In SQL Server, that SQL queries format will be changed. Not only that format, no, data types are definitely changed. From one database to another database, data types must be what they're different. Both are not same. The data types are not same. The queries formats are also not same in all the database now. But still our Hibernate software has to create database dependent SQL query or not. But which database dependent SQL query? What database dependent SQL queries we have to use? What database dependent data types it has to use internal? So if database dependent SQL queries, if we want to prepare by Hibernate, first of all, Hibernate must identify what database we are using. How Hibernate is able to identify what database we are using there? Is it possible for Hibernate? Is it possible for Hibernate to connect with a particular database directly without getting that information? No, not possible. So we have to provide at least the database name or not. We have to provide at least the database nativity information or not. Yes, the database nativity information is provided in Hibernate in the form of a set of predefined classes. For each and every database, a separate nativity is provided by a predefined class inside the Hibernate for each and every database. That a database nativity class, the database nativity class is nothing but dialect class. The database nativity class is what there? Dialect class. The dialect class is provided, a separate dialect class is provided for each and every database, which provides the database native data type, the database native SQL query syntaxes, that everything about the database nativity. Nativity details are provided by that dialect class. That dialect class configuration also we have to provide inside like what there inside the configuration file now. Sir, got it or not? Not only the normal configurations, no, dialect properties also be provided. But where we are going to provide the dialect as a separate property only. As a property only, we are going to provide this. That's okay, fine. That is one point here. Yes, sir. I'll forget my point or not. Finally, now tell me what is this dialect? No, dialect in the sense dialect is a class. Dialect is a class inside the Hibernate. What it is providing there? It provides the underlying database. Not only underlying database, it provides a database native implementations. Database nativity. Nativity means that what? Query syntaxes may be, data types may be. All these things are provided by these dialect classes to the Hibernate. If you specify one particular dialect class to the Hibernate, as per the dialect provided database nativity only, it is able to create SQL queries. Then that SQL queries are going to be executed. For example, Oracle database, Oracle dialect. MySQL database, MySQL dialect. SQL server dialect. Like this, some dialect classes are available for each and every database. But what database we are using, first we have to recognize it. On the basis of that only, we have to provide what there the respective dialect classes. So this is the meaning of dialect. Not only the dialect, no, understand it one more time. What we are providing there, mapping resource, mapping file. That means which mapping file we are using in our Hibernate application and how many mapping files we are using in our Hibernate applications. All these mapping files must be configured inside the configuration file. That configuration file is for entire Hibernate application. What are the various mapping files which we want to use there? That mapping files must be configured inside what there? Inside the Hibernate configuration file. Right, to provide configuration of the mapping file, here we have to use what tag there? Mapping tag here we have to use. What exactly the tag here we have to use there? Mapping tag. Along with this mapping tag, what attribute we have to provide there? Resource. Resource is equal to name and location of the mapping file. Employee.hpm.xml, account.hpm.xml. Like this we are going to provide. Like this we can specify what there? A particular name to this resource attribute inside the mapping now. That's it. Now this is the total story about like what there? Hibernate configuration file now. All right, sir. Then example code, if I go now, if I do that, at least some configuration file example code here, if I provide now, there we are able to get some content here. Finally, now tell me 5 concept configurations here we are going to provide. Driver class name, driver URL, database username, database password, dialect. What next one here? Mapping resource. 6 concepts, 6 configurations we must provide at each and every configuration file. What are the 6 configurations? No, driver class name, driver URL, database username, database password. Up to these are connection properties. Next one is a dialect property, dialect class name. Next one is what there? Mapping file details, mapping resource that we have to provide. Then only we are able to finish our what there? Configuration file clearly. Is it good or not? Okay. Right, sir. Now that's it. That's all for today. All right, sir. Then what about our tomorrow's class? Is that Spring class or Hibernate class now? Spring class only, right? Right. Okay. Then Spring class only I'm going to take it tomorrow at 5 o'clock. But still is a bit confusion for me whether I'm going to come here or I'm going to take in online. But anyway, class I'm going to take no. But 5 o'clock onwards, I will take your class here. But I'll give information to you regarding that. Right? Try to follow that. Okay. Why? Because maximum I'll try to come here. I'll try to come here to this location. In the worst case, we have to accept it on tomorrow. At least in the next weekend, I may plan for taking the class on like what they're offline at weekend. Okay, but Sunday evening maybe a small plans are going to be happen. That's why I'm thinking about it. But maximum I'll try to come here. In the worst case, if I'm not going to come here, I'll take at least in online about that particular class there. Then we can attend for it. But class is going to be happen 5 to minimum 8 or 8:30 or 9, depending on our content. I will take the class that we can plan for it. Okay, right, sir. Thank you. But tomorrow, tomorrow morning, I'll give intimation to you regarding our admin people will send message to you. As per that, you can follow it. Okay, right, sir. Thank you. Tomorrow we'll see the tomorrow part.